shouldn't post certain things on social media that might draw negative attention towards somebody else. Maybe not in that specific context, but in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7, Jesus hits on certain, he hits on one very, very big point. It's the fact that the law, or our lack of following the law, is an issue of the heart. It's not just simply action. And one of the most famous ways that he lays this out, he says, if you have hate in your heart, you are a murderer. Those are very, very strong words. If you hate, it is the exact same thing as murder. It does not matter if I jump off this stage and stab Nate in the chest 37 times. It is the exact same thing if I were to just stand up here and loathe this man who is sitting in front of me. I don't have anything against you, by the way. I just thought it would be rude to stab one of these two. Sorry about it. And I'm certainly not going over you to the row behind you. Y'all know how it is, right? So all that to say, we're reading part of Jesus' most famous sermon this evening. We're going to start in verse 15. We're going to read verses 15 through 20, and then we're going to pick up a little bit further on beyond that. And what we're going to see in verses 15 through 20, Jesus is going to talk about this idea of false prophets. So Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 15, Jesus says, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. Verse 16, you will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, you will recognize them by their fruit. So again, he's talking a lot about false prophets. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. Anybody feel free to answer. What do you think a false prophet is? Go ahead. That's really good. He said someone who teaches the Word of God differently from the way it's supposed to be taught. Anybody else have an idea? You're not wrong, by the way. Nobody. Okay. As I was thinking about this, I've come down to what I think are three categories of false prophets. A false prophet might be somebody who is completely twisted about what the Bible says, and then they gain a following based on their radical views. Anybody know who David Koresh is? I got a couple oh yeahs. Yep, right? I would also make the argument that a false prophet could be somebody who has malicious intent towards Christians or Christianity, but they disguise it as Christian values or beliefs. I think we see that a lot in our modern culture. And the third category would be a false prophet could be somebody, pay attention to this, who acts like they are followers of Jesus, but in reality, they're acting selfishly. See, these are the kind of people who will use Jesus' name, or in the 21st century, use this term of Christianity to justify something that is neither holy nor righteous. They will come up with these ideas that sound very, very good at their core. They will dress it up with this idea of Christian love of somebody. In all actuality, it's not exactly holy and it's not righteous. There's a really, really good book written by a man by the name of Glenn Scrivener. And this book is entitled The Air We Breathe. And in this book, Glenn spends probably 250 to 300 pages talking about how most of the values that we take for granted in our 21st century Western culture, we can thank Christianity for. He says things like equality, things like compassion, things like consent, freedom, or progress were all born out of the early Christian movement, and now, in our modern times, we just take that as a basic fact of life, right? Would you guys agree that consent is just seen as a basic human right? Yeah, it was not the case in the first century. Equality was something that would have been a completely foreign concept to a first century audience. Of course, slavery was a thing. Of course, children are property. Of course, the woman has to listen to the man no matter what. That's first century thinking. Nowadays, we're like that. Every single one of those things are absurd. And so what ends up happening in our 21st century is people will take some of these qualities, things like equality, compassion, consent, freedom, or progress. They will attach the name of Christianity to them, or they will staple Jesus to them, and then pervert this idea to achieve their own personal goal. And I would also add to that this victimhood mentality that is oh so popular in our culture is also born out of a perversion of Christian ethics and the fact that we should, in a Christian worldview, care for people who are marginalized and people who are oppressed. And so because there's this general idea, and the Bible talks very much about how we should take care of widows, we should take care of orphans, we should help people who cannot help themselves, people have now started to position themselves as victims to say, now you can't treat me bad. You have to treat me a certain way because I think that you see me as less than, and that's wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, that is false prophet. That is false prophecy. So how do we determine which people are false prophets and which people are genuine laborers of the Christian faith? If you guys missed it in the text, Jesus says it right there. It's literally been up to this entire time. He says it's by their fruit. Fruit is very often used in the Bible as a metaphor for that which someone produces. It's not specifically talking about if Ernest was an apple farmer and all of his apples were amazing, then he's a great person. And Lee, he did his best to farm grapes, but the soil was wretched. His grapes are terrible. They usually turn out as raisins, and therefore he's not a good person. That's not what Jesus is talking about here. He's talking about a metaphor. And so my question is, what I would like for you guys to think about this evening is, what fruit are you producing? Are you producing gossip? Are you producing anger or hate? Are you producing jealousy? Are you producing lies, rumors? Or is your fruit something else? Do you produce fruit of encouragement? Do you produce fruit of compassion? I love to quote the Apostle Paul from Ephesians 4 when he says we are to, quote, walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which we are called. You should walk in a way that is worthy of your calling. So are you walking in such a way, or are you demonstrating something that is contrary to what you claim? You see, Jesus gives us a warning in verse 20, if you could pull that back up for me. He says, that which does not bear good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire. What do y'all think that means? It's pretty obvious to me. Don't be shy. That which does not bear good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire. Shout it out. Huh? What does he mean by cut down, thrown into the fire? Say it, Lee. They will be destroyed. He's literally talking about heaven and hell. Ladies and gentlemen, hell is eternal separation from God. And let me give you a quick little note on this. This is something I shared with my students on Sunday night. Those are in our discipleship group that I talked about a week ago. If hell is an eternal separation from God, and all that is good is from God, then logically, hell is a separation from everything that is good. It is being completely separated from everything that is good. You cannot enjoy a single thing if your tree is cut down and thrown into the fire, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very real topic that he's getting to. Now, let's move on to verses 21, 22, and 23. Jesus says in verse 21, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day," this is verse 22, "many will say to me, 'Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? Didn't we do mighty works in your name?' Jesus says, 'And I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'" Jesus isn't holding back. This isn't Jesus being like, "Go sit in a timeout for 2 minutes." He says, "I never knew you." He says, in verse 20, bad fruit goes away, and then he adds something else to it. Sunday morning, I'm going to preach from 2 Peter chapter 1. For those of you guys who aren't normally here on Sundays, I would encourage you to come back Sunday morning. One of my main points Sunday morning is this: don't be an ineffective Christian. Don't set out to be useless for Jesus. Don't do the right thing for the wrong reason. You ever thought about that? I can't get in trouble if I did the right thing. Well, what was your motivation? What was your heart? What was your intent? Because we already determined in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus wasn't worried about your intent. He wasn't worried about the actual action. He wants the heart. Sunday night, we talked about, we spent most of the evening discussing what it means to be blessed. And the fact that you can be blessed by blessing other people. You see, there are people in this world who will help somebody else out strictly for selfish reasons. You ever met somebody like that? Somebody who will go and throw a $5 bill out the window to the homeless guy in the median and then tell everybody. You don't know that guy? I know that guy. I've known that guy. Jesus warns about this too. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 2, he says, "When you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others." He says, "Truly I say to you, they have received their reward." Jesus says, when you brag to somebody, "Look what I did. Look how good I am. Look how great I am. Look how awesome I am at being a Christian," and somebody's like, "Man, that's wonderful. Great job." That's all the rewards you get. Done. No more. You already got it. Jesus gives us warnings about doing good things with the intent of being recognized. And so what's the motivation then to produce good fruit? What's the motivation to live righteously, to live the way that we were called to, the way that we were commanded to by God? See, atheists and secular humanists would make the argument that the reward or the motivation for treating other people decently is that we all get along. By and large, if I'm nice to you, for the most part, you'll be nice back to me. That typically bears itself out. But is that literally our entire goal? According to the Bible, 1 John chapter 4:19 says, "We love because He," speaking about God, "first loved us." How did God first love us? I'm glad you asked, because the Apostle Paul says in Romans 5:8 that God showed His love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. The reason for us to produce good fruit is because God did a good work for us. We were loved when we tried to avoid God. We were loved when we tried to ignore God. We were loved when we tried to run away from God and stay away from His love and live in our sin and stay away from every good and righteous thing. And so our motivation then isn't so that we look good. It's not so that we can earn God's favor. We already got that. Or to earn points for heaven. Our motivation is to love like Jesus did. Because He did, I will. Maybe you don't see it in this passage, but Jesus is very clear. He says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Simply claiming belief is not the same thing as believing something. I could tell you, I could make the claim that there's $5,000 taped under one of those chairs. Does that mean I believe it? Not necessarily. What if I insisted that we start picking up every single chair one at a time and started to act like I believe that there's $5,000 taped to the bottom of one of your chairs? Now do I believe it? No, of course not. So we can't pretend to obey Jesus, just act like we believe in it, throw a Christian label on top of it, and expect Jesus to reward us in the end. He says that people will do good things. He says that, go to verse 22. Many will say to me, did we not prophesy in your name? That is talking about somebody going out and spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. Did we not cast out demons in your name? Did we not do many mighty works in your name? And Jesus says what? I never knew you. They're going to say that they do these things because of Jesus, and they will be lying. Jesus claims He never knew those people. That word knew or know in the Greek carries a feeling of recognition and understanding. So when Jesus says, I never knew you, He says, you don't look familiar to me at all. You are unrecognizable to me. Someone's going to stand before Jesus and say, look what I did. And Jesus is going to be like, who are you? That's literally the response that's going on right here. This is not to say that somebody believed in Jesus, did their best, tried to serve Jesus, fell away, and then got lost. Jesus says these people were never His. Never. The warning here is to check your motivation. Every single thing that you do in this life, every context that you live in, there is a specific set of rules. There's a certain way that you're supposed to act. Every single one of you who are at school, is there not a list of school rules, like a school code of conduct, right? Your bus driver, for those of you that ride a bus, probably expects you to act a certain way while you are on the bus. Right or wrong? Come on, guys, wake up. I'm almost through here. Your parents expect you, they want you, they've taught you to behave a certain way. When you show up here to church, there are certain things that you don't do or say because this is a church that shouldn't do elsewhere, but you probably do elsewhere, right? Church has a set of expectations attached to it. Where are my athletes at? When's the last time you hit the ball and ran straight to third? You can't. There's a certain set of rules that we have to follow in every single context of our lives. The point is, why? Why do we do those things? If Bryson were to crush one into deep left center and run straight to third, his intent is to hit a triple, but he can't go about it the wrong way. And it's the same thing with the way that we're supposed to behave. Like, why do we try to live righteously? Why do we try not to sin? Is this actually a legitimate response to what Jesus did for you on the cross? Or is it just so you look good? Just so you can uphold this Christian image because I'm the kid that goes to church every Wednesday night and I invite my friends and they expect me to act a certain way, so I got to keep up appearances? Or is it just so that life might go easier for you? I'm going to pick on Bryson for one more second. When you follow all the rules that your parents have set out for you, is life easier or harder? Way easier. You could go off and do whatever thing you want to, and the consequences are brutal. Things don't work out the way you want them to when you do things the wrong way. But his motivation should be, I'm not taking a guess at what Bryce's motivations are for behaving. His motivation should be, my parents love me, they take care of me, they know what's best for me, so I listen to them. I obey them. Rather than, I don't want dad to whip me with a belt as soon as I walk in the door. So what I want us to think about, and what we're going to do here in just a moment, is we're going to break up into some small groups. I'm going to break off into some small discussion groups. I texted all your leaders a list of questions that we're going to kind of go through. I want you guys to participate in this. Give me 1 second, I see you. All right, I want you guys to actually participate. Mr. Lee has like 40 stories he's got queued up right now, but he's going to hold them until somebody else shares first. Can we do that? I know you got 40 in the hopper, but let's get somebody else in there first, right? But anyways, what I want us to do this evening is to think about, I want us to check our hearts. Look at yourself and say, why do I do the things that I do? What's my motivation? What's the reason? Because the last thing you would want to have happen is to think you've done everything right, you've done everything good, you did everything that you were supposed to, and you stand before Jesus and he says, who are you? How embarrassing would that be? How heartbreaking would that be if you stand before Jesus and he's like, I don't know you? It's a serious